Have you ever been called the strong one until the day you couldn't be and no one knew what to do with you? If you've ever given your all to a job, a system, a place that only noticed you when you stopped functioning, then this story isn't fiction, it's a reflection. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't being broken. It's realizing the world never planned for you to heal. This story is for you. They say loyalty is earned, but I used to think you could buy it with time, with hours, years, poured into a machine that never looked back. I gave Vexen 10 unbroken years of sweat-slick keyboards, red-eyed debugging marathons, and answering messages at 3 a.m. because the server never sleeps. I didn't just work there, I belonged there, or at least, I thought I did. The memory always starts the same way, a champagne flute in my hand, beads of condensation clinging to the rim like they were afraid to fall. The retreat was held at some rented vineyard, chandeliers swaying above a sea of crisp suits and carefully filtered laughter. I wasn't drinking, I never did, but I held that flute the way you hold a compliment you're afraid to spill. Richard stood at the front of the room, sleeves rolled, charm weaponized, commanding the floor like he was the one being toasted. He looked right at me, right through me almost, and raised his glass. "If I had 10 more Ethans," he said, voice cutting clean through the clinking, "we'd run the whole industry." I smiled. I smiled like that sentence meant I mattered. Like it wasn't just another throwaway line at another retreat for another man in another room who wouldn't remember what he said by morning. But I remembered. I remembered because I needed to believe it meant something. That all the weekends I gave up, all the birthdays I missed, all the canceled flights and maybe next times were part of a bigger picture that saw me. That valued me. That would eventually, finally, repay me. I was the last one to leave the retreat that night. I stayed behind to help the interns fold up name cards and pack away catering trays. One of them asked me if I ever got tired. Tired? I echoed, blinking too fast. No, this place gives back what you put in. That was the first lie I ever told, without realizing it was a lie. Weeks blurred after that. Q4 crashed like a meteor, and I was in the crater with a laptop and half a team to rebuild. Someone from HR fainted during a product demo. Someone else had a breakdown in the stairwell. I filled in for both. Took their calls, covered their tasks. I didn't complain. If I'm honest, I liked being the one who could handle it. The one people whispered about in break rooms. Give it to Ethan, he doesn't crack. I didn't crack. Not then. At my desk, under that relentless blue-white hum of the office LEDs, I wore my badge like armor. Polished the plastic against my sleeve until it gleamed. A silly ritual. But it made me feel anchored. It said, "You belong here. You're one of the good ones." I remember a Thursday, maybe February, maybe March, when a junior dev, Samir, presented a back-end fix I had spent 12 hours salvaging the night before. He used my comments, my structure, my solution. Richard applauded him. I said nothing, just clapped along with everyone else. That badge on my chest felt suddenly heavier. I thought loyalty was currency, I muttered to myself in the restroom later, scrubbing my hands like I could wash off the sourness rising in my throat. I didn't realize it was just convenient silence. Still, I came back the next morning. Still, I didn't speak. I built myself into a dependable myth. And myths don't bleed in front of others. Until the call. It came during a debugging sprint, my screen swimming in lines of code, everything breaking, and the project manager breathing down my neck. I didn't answer at first, just silenced it. Second call, ignored. Third, I saw the name. Aunt Celine. That was all it took. 3 words from her. "She's gone, Ethan. My mother, gone." The world didn't stop. No orchestral crash, no dramatic rain on the window pane, just stillness. Like someone had turned the volume down on life and forgotten to turn it back up. I sat there, phone on my lap, cursor blinking in an open terminal like it was waiting for me to finish something. My fingers hovered above the keys, trembling. I couldn't remember what I was supposed to be typing, what line came next, what function I was debugging. I stared, blinked, scanned the same snippet of code again and again. For the first time in a decade, the machine kept moving, but I didn't. I don't remember the rest of that day. I think I told someone, maybe HR, maybe I just walked out, maybe nobody noticed I left at all. What I do remember is standing in my living room that night, holding my Vexen badge in one hand and a framed photo of my mother in the other. Her smile, quiet, tired, loving, looked nothing like the face I last saw in the hospital. I wanted to cry, couldn't. The grief hadn't hit yet. It hovered, waiting for permission. But I didn't know how to give it. I had trained myself to override emotions so efficiently that even this felt like a system bug I was failing to fix. So I did what I always do. I opened my laptop, pulled up the broken code, tried to work. But the screen swam. The cursor blinked like a metronome in a song I didn't remember writing. Every line I read slipped away like smoke, and that's when I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just grief. I was disappearing. Piece by piece, function by function, line by brittle line. And no one, not Richard, not Vexen, not even the people I had carried on my back for years, was coming to find me. The hallway to Richard's office felt longer than it ever had before. I counted the carpet seams like fault lines beneath my feet, each step soft but seismic. My badge felt like a lead weight on my chest. For years, it had meant I belonged, that I was essential. But now, walking toward the man who ran the machine I'd given everything to, it felt like evidence, not of my value, but of how much I had to lose. I had rehearsed the conversation 100 times in my head. Short, professional, controlled. Just ask. Don't cry. Don't shake. Don't look weak. I kept telling myself that, over and over. But my hands weren't listening. My fingers trembled against the folder I carried. Doctor's notes. Appointment slips. Insurance authorizations. Proof. As if pain needed a signature to be taken seriously. Richard didn't look up when I walked in. He never did. He sat behind his desk, a sleek slab of glass that reflected everything but emotion, flipping his Mont Blanc pen between his fingers like he was waiting for someone more important to arrive. "You said you needed a few minutes," he muttered, finally glancing up. "Make it quick, Ethan. Q1's already a war zone." I nodded, though the lump in my throat made it hard to breathe. I placed the folder down on his desk, careful not to let my hands linger. "I'm not asking for a raise, or a bonus, My voice cracked, and I hated it. I steadied myself. "I just need time, a short leave, a couple of weeks. I'm working with a therapist. It's not forever." He didn't even open the folder, just kept flipping that pen. Silence, then a shrug. "We're not a therapy ward, Ethan." My spine straightened like I'd been slapped. He leaned back, as if this conversation bored him. "You were the example. Don't ruin that now." That sentence didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a verdict. A man disappointed that his favorite machine had developed a fault. "I'm not broken," I whispered. But I don't think he heard it. Maybe I didn't say it out loud. The meeting ended as quickly as it began. He dismissed me with a nod, like a waiter clearing a plate. I picked up the folder, untouched, and walked out. Each step away from that office was a struggle to maintain dignity. My lungs burned. My hands shook. But I kept walking. Past the receptionist, past the new hire orientation down the hall, past the motivational poster that said, "We take care of our own." The elevator doors closed, and I finally exhaled. Not a breath, a collapse. In that quiet metal box, I looked at my own reflection and barely recognized myself. Gaunt eyes, sleepless shadow, a faint tremor in my jaw. "Don't ruin that now," I repeated under my breath, like a curse, like a line from a dream I couldn't wake from. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after. For a while, no one called. HR sent a polite message asking for an update on my availability. I didn't answer. I had nothing left to give them, not even the words. And then, 2 weeks later, the envelope arrived. Brown, unmarked, folded at the edges, stuffed carelessly into my mailbox like it meant nothing. Inside was my ID badge. No letter, no explanation. just that plastic rectangle with my name etched across it, now stripped of meaning. The thing I had once polished like a medal, now returned to me like a borrowed pen. Not revoked. Returned. As if I no longer had a use for it. As if I had never mattered. I sat at my kitchen table, holding it between my fingers, watching how the light glinted off the surface. Funny, how it still caught the light so easily while I had stopped catching anyone's attention at all. I turned it over in my hand. Backside blank. Just like the silence that had followed since I left. I wasn't let go, I said quietly, the words catching like thorns in my throat. I was erased. It wasn't the firing that destroyed me. It was the emptiness of it, the lack of acknowledgement, of closure. 10 years and all I got was my name spelled correctly on an object that no longer opened any doors. I thought about calling someone, HR, legal, a friend. But who would believe me? That the golden boy of Vexen, 10 more Ethans and we'd run the world, had become disposable? That grief had cracked me open, and instead of finding help, I found a door slamming shut. I dropped the badge into the trash can. Then I lay on my bed, fully clothed, face down. The room was quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional buzz of my phone lighting up beside me with job alerts and recruiter emails. Senior developer role in Technova 2x salary match. New opportunity, CTO track, Seattle-based AI firm. I didn't move. Not because I didn't want to, because I couldn't. Because a part of me had gone quiet. The part that used to fire back answers in meetings. That wrote 1,000-line scripts like it was breathing. That believed waking up every day with purpose made me someone worth keeping. Now, all that was left was silence. And silence wasn't just empty, it was honest. I lost time. Not dramatically, not like the movies where clocks melt and calendars swirl. I lost time the way water slips through your fingers when you're too numb to feel it. Slowly, quietly, without resistance. At first, I still woke up at 6:30. Muscle memory. I even reached for my badge out of habit like a ghost limb, but the morning light didn't feel like morning anymore. It felt like an accusation, like a bright, burning reminder that the world was moving, and I wasn't. My apartment shrank around me. The coffee table became a cluttered altar to false productivity, resumes, crumpled drafts of cover letters, a coaster that never held anything warm. The kitchen sink filled with spoons I never remembered using. And taped to the fridge, in block letters from a time when I still believed I'd bounce back, was a yellow post-it that read, "Apply." The ink faded faster than my resolve. Days bled together. I started measuring time in coffee stains, rings left behind by mugs I didn't finish, emails I didn't open, notifications I didn't clear. I'd catch myself staring at my laptop screen, cursor blinking in a fresh Word doc like a metronome for a song I couldn't write. Sometimes I'd type my name just to see it there, then delete it again. It wasn't sadness, it was static. A dense white fog that lived in my chest, fogging up every intention, every spark of movement. Some mornings I'd pull up a job listing and stare at it for hours, not reading, not applying, just hovering. Like the act of being near purpose might trick my brain into thinking I still had one. "They didn't just fire me," I whispered once, pressing my forehead to the cold glass of my living room window. "They rewrote my story and deleted the best parts." I thought about my mother more in those weeks than I had in years. Her voice came in fragments, never full sentences. A memory of her folding laundry while humming, the way she'd tighten her grip on my shoulder before a school recital, her hand patting mine, steady and warm as she told me, "You never let anyone down." I had let myself down, and the echo of her faith in me hurt more than anything Richard had ever said. I agreed to one interview, just one. Some mid-tier tech firm looking for a back-end lead. The recruiter sounded thrilled on the phone. "Your background's ideal. The founder's a big fan of Vexen guys. Says you all come polished." Polished. The word made my skin crawl. On the day of the video call, I showered, put put on a blazer, combed my hair back like I used to. But the face in the mirror looked wrong, like someone had borrowed it and forgotten to return it whole. I logged in early, checked the lighting, practiced smiling. And then the interviewer appeared. He asked a simple question. "So, Ethan, walk me through your leadership style?" Easy. I'd answered that 100 times before. But nothing came out. Not a word. My throat clenched. My jaw locked. It was like watching a film reel snap mid-frame. I stared at the camera, willing myself to speak, to perform, to be what I used to be. Instead, I stammered, paused, apologized. Then, I logged off. No explanation, no excuse. Just shame. I collapsed back in my chair, my breath shaking, hands covering my face as if I could hide from myself. I wanted to scream, but even that took more energy than I had. Later that night, I opened the application window again, sat with it, watched the blinking cursor. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember most of those nights, if I'm honest. Sometimes I'd wake up at 2 a.m. to find the screen still on, the same job portal glowing like a neon lie, promising purpose if I'd only try harder, if I'd only be less broken. I stopped answering texts, ignored missed calls. Even Maya's first message sat unread for days. I heard what happened. They used you, like they used me. That line sat heavy in my inbox, unopened but seen. It lingered, pressed, echoed. They used you. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to say it, not sugarcoat it, not offer tips or TED Talks or hashtags, just name it. Still, I said nothing back. What was I supposed to reply? That she was right? That I was still here in this cave of static and grief, barely able to shower, let alone rebuild? I was ashamed. Ashamed of not being over it. Ashamed of still hearing Richard's voice in my head every time I tried to write a sentence without doubting myself. Don't ruin that now. I didn't ruin it. I just stopped fitting the illusion. 2 weeks after her first message, Maya followed up. A new email. Subject line, "We build the place they can't." Inside, just one sentence. They built a machine. What if we built a place for the ones it discarded? No emojis, no exclamation points, no sales pitch. Just that. A sentence that didn't feel like an offer. It felt like a doorway. A crack of light in the fog. I didn't answer. Not yet. But I reread it. Twice. Then again. And for the first time in weeks, my breath caught. Not from panic, but from something else. Something sharp. Something alive. Something I had almost forgotten the name of. Hope. I didn't open the email right away. It sat in my inbox like an unopened letter from a past version of myself. The kind of message you know will change something, even if you don't know what yet. I hovered over it, hesitated, clicked. Maya Singh. They used you too. The message was short. They built a machine. What if we built a place for the ones it discarded? I read it once, twice, then again. And with every reread, it got louder, not in volume, but in gravity. It felt like someone reaching into the fog I'd been drowning in and drawing a line in the air. A direction. Not a fix, not a rescue. A beginning. That line, it wasn't motivation, it was mourning, reshaped into motion. It didn't pretend we weren't broken. It asked what we'd do with our brokenness now that we knew. It echoed. In the hum of my fridge, in the empty silence after midnight, in the mirror where my reflection still wore a shirt from a company that no longer existed in my story. They built a machine. What if we built a place? My fingers reached for the drawer by instinct, second one from the bottom where I'd tossed the badge, the thing I used to polish every morning as if shining it could somehow keep me seen. It was still there. Its edges were worn now, smudged, powerless, and yet, as I held it in my hand, I felt the old weight return, guilt, pride, failure, memory. I didn't throw it away. I placed it back in the drawer, deliberately, softly, like a burial. Not anger, not revenge. Closure. The next morning, I listed my condo. I didn't need the space, or the silence, or the way every wall echoed with the sound of a life I no longer recognized. I needed change that couldn't be undone with a single sad thought. Something loud, concrete, real. I sent Maya a single line. Where do we start? She didn't waste time. That afternoon, we met at a coffee shop near the university, the kind of place with chairs too low and music too soft, like it was designed for secrets. I hadn't seen her in months, not since her own quiet offboarding, swept under HR's carpet like a glitch in their productivity matrix. She looked older, not in years, but in edge. There was a tremble in her hands as she reached, ched for her drink, a twitch in her smile when the barista called someone's name too loud. But her eyes were clear. "Thanks for meeting," she said, voice hoarse. "I almost didn't come," I admitted. "It still feels like I'm walking around wearing failure like a coat I can't take off." Maya sipped her coffee and shrugged. "I still have panic attacks." Her words hit like wind through glass, honest, unguarded. "I still wake up and forget I don't work there anymore," I murmured. "I still dream I'm on a client call and can't breathe," she added. We sat in that quiet for a moment, not to fill it, but to respect it. Then she said it, soft but unshakable. "I still have panic attacks. I still show up." That line stuck. Not, "I'm better," not, "I moved on," just, "I still show up." I looked at her across the table, the steam from our mugs rising between us like breath returning to a body. "I don't even know what I'm building," I said. Her lips quirked. "Not a company." I blinked. "Then what?" "A haven," she said. That word didn't echo. It settled. That night, we found a listing for a dusty second-floor unit above an old bakery. The rent was cheap because the building groaned when you walked and the windows cried during rain. It had creaky stairs and paint chips and no insulation, but it had space, and light, and doors we could open ourselves. We signed the lease with hands that shook. No clients, no website, no logo, just belief. We bought second-hand desks, took turns scrubbing the floors with old towels and vinegar. I brought my mother's teacup to place on the windowsill. Maya brought a ceramic plant pot someone once gave her when she got promoted, before they took it all away. We didn't know what it would become. We only knew what it wasn't. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't silence. It wasn't the kind of place where your soul had to shrink to make room for your productivity. We named it later. But in those early days, it didn't need a name. It was enough that it existed. Enough that we existed. Together. Alive. And willing to try again. The first thing we did was paint the walls. Not because it mattered. Not because it made the space feel newer. But because the color of old dust, grayish, chipped, and ghostly, reminded us too much of the rooms we came from. The conference walls at Vexen had been glass and steel, sterile and gleaming. This office had heartwood floors that moaned under our weight and window panes fogged by time. We chose a color called sunrise linen, though it looked more like hope spilled across drywall. Maya brought an old playlist. Lo-fi beats and forgotten indie songs that belonged to a version of her from before all the panic rooms and HR interventions. I brought takeout and dollar store rollers. At night we stayed late, dragging paintbrushes through uneven corners, laughing too hard when one of us smeared the ceiling. The space began to smell like sweat and second chances. Our desks were old coffee shop tables, uneven and stained with caffeine ghosts. We didn't care. We sanded them down, painted them white. We wanted everything here to start fresh, even if nothing about us felt new. I remember the first thing I taped to the wall, a piece of cardboard with hand-drawn letters in Maya's scratchy marker handwriting. "We hire the ones you left behind." No slogan, no mission statement. Just truth. We didn't even have a website yet, but we had that sign, and somehow, that was enough. Until it wasn't. Our first pitch was to a local design firm. We built a deck overnight, rehearsed it line by line, ironed our only good clothes, They smiled politely, thanked us, and signed with someone else. Too small, they said, too untested. Our second inquiry came from a startup founder who loved our vibe. He ghosted us after 3 calls, never even said goodbye. Each silence cut deeper. And then, one morning I couldn't get out of bed. I stared at the ceiling for 2 hours, my chest tight with something shapeless. Guilt, maybe, or fear. The fear that it had all been a delusion, that Haven wasn't a second chance. It was a theater we built to pretend we hadn't already failed. Maya found me curled on the floor of the office hours later. I had dragged myself in, but barely made it past the entryway. The sunlight from the window painted golden shapes on the hardwood beside me. I didn't move. "I thought I was better," I whispered. She crouched beside me, her shadow falling over my eyes. "Better isn't the goal," she said gently. "Breathing is." There was no pep talk, no corporate aphorism, just that, breathing. And I realized in that moment that every place I'd worked before had only cared if I performed. This place, our place, only cared if I survived. Later that night, I sat at one of the wobbly desks and pulled out a notepad. No laptops, no screens, just pen and paper. And I started to write. New policies. Haven Draft 1.0. Unlimited mental health days without penalty. Flexible hours for therapy or caregiving. Peer support circles every Friday. No unpaid overtime, ever. No hidden expectations. All projects come with scope, timeline, and human capacity notes. No hero culture. No praising burnout. Mistakes are data, not shame. I wrote until my hand ached, until the words stopped sounding radical and started sounding human. I remembered a time, years ago, when I was prepping for my first real interview. My mother had folded my shirt with the same care she reserved for hospital corners and handwritten letters. She ran her hand over the fabric, smoothing wrinkles that weren't there, then looked at me and said, "You're more than their offer." I didn't understand what she meant back then. I do now. Because Haven wasn't about competing. It wasn't about looking shiny enough for the next recruiter or the next grant. It was about designing a place where value wasn't tied to output, where people could fall apart and still be welcomed back. We didn't look like a company. We had no business cards, no polished deck, no glossy elevator pitch. But we had light, and a printer that jammed every other morning, and a couch that sank too low when you sat, but nobody minded. I still didn't feel like a CEO. Sometimes I'd look in the mirror and see the same haunted version of myself from that elevator ride at Vexen, the same empty badge space on my chest. But the light stayed on, and that was something. That was everything. It started with Daniel. He didn't knock, just stood in the doorway of our office one rainy Tuesday morning, soaked shoulders hunched under a fraying hoodie, eyes darting like he was expecting someone to chase him. He held a printout of our flyer in one hand, creased, water-warped, the ink running in streaks like mascara. "Is this place real?" he asked. Maya looked up from her laptop. I was halfway through troubleshooting a frozen browser plugin. The power had flickered twice that morning, and the heater in the back room made a sound like a struggling toaster. But I remember thinking, yes, this is real. We nodded. He stepped inside slowly, like each footfall might trigger a trap. I offered him tea. He declined. The office phone rang and he flinched, visibly, not in some small, polite way. His whole body twitched, eyes squeezed shut, hands clenching into fists like the sound was a weapon. I muted the line. He looked at me, face pale, jaw tight. "I had a panic attack during a demo once," he whispered. "They said I compromised the client's trust." I remembered the look Richard gave me when I first asked for time. "You're safe here," I told him. His face didn't soften right away. It would take weeks before he stopped flinching, months before he could answer phones again. But he stayed. The next was Lisa. She showed up cradling a baby in one arm and her resume in the other, printed in grayscale because she'd run out of ink at home. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "I don't have daycare yet," she said, voice already filled with apology. I know that makes me unreliable. I looked at her and thought, what kind of world makes you believe being a mother is a liability? I took the resume, barely glanced at it. We're not hiring positions, I said. We're building a place. She didn't understand right away. Most of them didn't, because they came from systems that taught them they had to earn kindness. That stability was reserved for the flawless, that any crack in their armor would be filed, flagged, and eventually used to fire them. I had no grand speech, no onboarding slideshow. Just this. Here, we don't measure how you bounce back. We give you time to fall. That became our unofficial motto. Not in bold fonts, not in branding decks, in whispers. It spread like a rumor people wanted to believe in, but didn't dare say aloud in full volume. A Slack message in a private dev channel. Hey, there's this place. They don't track sick days. A comment thread on a burnout subreddit. I got hired. I cried during the interview. They said it was fine. A line in a Facebook DM between two exhausted coworkers. You'd like Haven. They don't punish you for being human. We didn't advertise. We didn't have the money. We didn't need it. Pain finds pain, and people, when given even the smallest light, will carry it to others still in the dark. By the end of the month, we had our third client, a small publishing startup that had lost 2 editors in 6 weeks to burnout. They asked if we could build their content calendar and lead their copy workflow. We said yes. 3 weeks later, a 5th client came, then a 7th. I still didn't sleep well. My hands still shook during board calls. I'd mute the mic and wipe sweat from my palms before speaking. Some nights, I'd draft emails and delete them 3 times, afraid I sounded too weak, too unsure, too exposed. Maya noticed. She always did. You okay? She asked one morning, sliding a cup of tea toward me without asking. I keep thinking we'll screw it up, I admitted. That we're just pretending to know what we're doing. She smiled. Not the corporate kind. The seen it all, and I'm still standing kind. We're not failing, she said. We're feeling. That's how why. You know it's real. That line stayed with me, because she was right. Real doesn't look polished. It looks like Daniel showing up 10 minutes late but staying an hour after close because he finally finished a pitch he believed in. It looks like Lisa typing with one hand while her daughter naps beside her on a blanket. It looks like Maya pausing during meetings to take 3 deep breaths, not to impress anyone, but to remain. Meanwhile, Vexen started to bleed, quietly, but noticeably. Their product timeline slipped. Their Glassdoor reviews tanked. I saw the posts. Great pay until they bury you under it. Management is a panic attack factory. I left with more money and less self-worth. One night, someone forwarded me a screenshot of a company-wide email from Richard. Subject: Recalibrating efficiency in the post-remote era. It was filled with corporate euphemisms. Talk of recalibrated KPIs, alignment metrics, zero-tolerance policies for emotional volatility. He still didn't get it. Still believed people were machines that needed patching, not humans who needed space. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I felt something shift, not outside. Inside. A soft click, like something locking into place. We were still small, still broke most days, but the cracks in Vexen, they weren't surface cracks anymore. They were structural. And I had stopped asking for applause, because we didn't need to be loud. We just needed to be real. I didn't expect it to end like that. No fireworks, no dramatic confrontation in a boardroom. Just a leak. One file. A memo Richard never thought would leave his outbox. A line buried in a bulleted list of directives to upper management casually slipped between a cost reduction graph and a bullet point on streamlining HR touchpoints. We're not here to coddle feelings. Mental health is a millennial hoax. Next, they'll want emotional support baristas. That sentence, snide, smug, surgically cruel, was screenshotted by a junior recruiter and sent to a friend, who sent it to a sibling, who posted it anonymously on a subreddit. By the time I saw it, it was already viral. Vexen Exposed was trending. I stared at the memo on my phone as headlines rolled in. News alerts, commentaries, think pieces, everyone dissecting the irony, how a company that once prided itself on being people first was, in fact, a fortress built on silence and burnouts. The internet has a funny way of turning disgust into poetry. Memes flooded in, Vexen logos morphing into factory machines devouring stick figure employees, fake employee handbooks with blank pages under support services, parodies of Richard's face with quotes he never said, but could have. The backlash wasn't loud. It was surgical. Sponsors pulled back. A university canceled a speaking engagement. Investors called for a closed-door meeting. And then, quietly, the resignation dropped. A single-sentence press release. Effective immediately, Richard Vexen is stepping down as CEO. We are realigning with evolving workplace values. It was it. After all the years I gave, after the silence I swallowed, after the pain they ignored. That was how it ended. I sat at my desk and read the line again, then again, and I felt nothing. No joy, no justice, just quiet. I didn't want him gone. I wanted him to understand. I wanted him to sit in the space he left behind and feel the air still vibrating with the voices he dismissed. I wanted him to see Daniels flinch at a ringing phone, Lisa nursing her child between task lists, Maya taking breathing breaks without asking permission. I wanted him to see us, not as liabilities, not as statistics, but as proof. Proof that you can't build longevity on fear. That people who feel safe will create wonders. That the ones you discard are often the ones most capable of rebuilding what you broke. But Richard wouldn't see that. He never saw anything that didn't mirror back his power. I didn't tweet, didn't post a takedown, didn't send a congratulatory "I told you so" to anyone still left behind. I made tea. Sat down at the low, uneven desk Maya and I had sanded ourselves, opened Haven's mission document, and started rewriting. Not to capitalize on Vexen's collapse, to define what we were for, not just what we were against. At the top, I deleted the line that had lived there since our first week. We're not a company, we're a place. It was true. But it wasn't complete. I thought about everyone who had walked through our door shaking, people who expected judgment and found breath instead. I remembered the woman who came in with hospital bracelets still on her wrist, whispering, "Am I allowed to try again?" I remembered the intern who cried when we said their panic attack didn't need explaining. I typed, "We don't rescue. We recognize." That was it. Recognition that you're already enough, already worthy, that your pain doesn't make you unfit, it makes you human. That surviving in a system that tried to erase you is proof of strength, not shame. Maya walked in as I hit save. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, paint still on her sleeve from redoing the kitchen wall. She looked at me, then at the silence hanging in the air like a weight. "You saw?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't celebrate either. She just sat across from me, exhaled slowly and said, "We keep building, because revenge ends. But restoration continues. We didn't need their apology. We had our own blueprint, and we were rewriting the rules, quietly, steadily, one soul at a time." The auditorium lights were warmer than I expected, low and golden, like they'd been dimmed on purpose to make the moment feel more intimate. The walls were lined with canvas prints of mission statements and innovation charts, but they looked dim beside the glow of something else. People. People who were still here. People who, for a time, didn't believe they would be. I stood in the wings, the award in my hands still cool, still too polished, like it didn't yet belong to me. The plaque read, "Best Workplace Culture, Haven Dynamics." A line of words etched in metal that 10 years ago would have sounded like a joke. 10 years ago, culture meant ping-pong tables and branded mugs. Now, it meant survival, community, compassion, coded into policy. My name was called. The applause was soft, Not thunderous, not forced, just real. I stepped forward, and then I saw them. Daniel, standing tall in the fourth row. His shoulders didn't curl in anymore. His hands were steady. He nodded at me, eyes brimming. Not with gratitude, but with pride. He knew he belonged here. Lisa, 2 rows back, bouncing her toddler gently in her lap. Her partner held her hand. She mouthed the word, "Thank you." I shook my head once, because the truth was, she built this too. And Maya. Leaning against the back wall, arms folded, that same quiet smile she wore the first day we opened the office. She didn't clap. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. I took the mic, paused, breathed, and said the one truth that had carried us here. Pain isn't weakness. It's data. And compassion? That's the operating system that scales. There was a stillness in the room, full, not empty. A silence that listened. I used to think I had to earn worth by burning out for it, I continued, voice steady now. That if I stayed late enough, if I proved myself hard enough, someone would eventually tell me I mattered. But I was wrong. I looked out at them, these people who had once been made to feel disposable. You don't scale a business by extracting energy. You scale it by designing safety, by giving people room to break, and the tools to rebuild. I stepped back, left the mic. The applause this time was a slow rise. No cue, no direction. Just people standing, quietly, to acknowledge something they felt in their bones. Later that evening, I returned to my apartment, new now, smaller, closer to the office. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and watched as our live dashboard loaded. Not quarterly revenue charts, not projected market capture, just a series of glowing bars, each one labeled, "Today I feel seen, supported, secure." A new hire had checked in anonymously and added a note. First time in years, I didn't dread Monday. I leaned back in my chair and let the moment sit. I remembered myself at 23, hunched over a screen in the corner of a too-bright Vexen cubicle, eyes red, heart racing, hands flying over keys trying to prove something I couldn't name. No one watched. No one cared. I believed if I just worked harder, I'd finally feel like enough. That boy, he didn't know better. But I do now. The next morning, I made a quiet stop on my way to work. Same downtown tower, same chrome-plated lobby. The Vexen logo still glowed faintly above the reception desk, though the building felt colder than I remembered. New faces, new exec, utives, same air, the kind that clung to your collar and whispered you were replaceable. I didn't say anything, just walked to the security desk and handed over a sealed envelope. The guard blinked. "Want me to sign?" "No," I said. "It's not official." He shrugged and placed it in the bin for internal mail. Inside the envelope was my old badge. Still scuffed, still intact. Taped to it was a single note, written in my own hand, not broken, rebuilt. I walked out without looking back. No cameras, no audience. Just the slow echo of my steps against marble. Outside, the morning sun had finally cut through the clouds. My breath caught against the chill, but for the first time, it didn't feel like pressure. It felt like air, like choice, like beginning. And as I crossed the street, heading toward a building where people didn't have to be perfect to be hired, I let the final thought settle in my chest, soft but unshakable. I was never disposable. I was the blueprint. You don't have to burn out to prove you matter. You don't have to wear a mask of okay just to be accepted. Sometimes the most radical thing we can do is build the thing we needed, when no one else would. Now I want to ask you, what's one thing you once thought made you weak, but now you see as your strength? Tell me in the comments. And if this story made you feel seen, even for a moment, hit like, subscribe, and stay close. We're building a place for the ones the world left behind.